RayzTheDead here, and today's video we're going to talk about how I tackled a Warpwolf Stalker conversion I did for a friend. It was a really fun project as the Warpwolf Stalker, or Warpwolf kit in general, is something near and dear to my heart. I've worked on this kit many times. So we started off with piling out a big bag of bits because I didn't have a full idea of what I wanted to do. I got told, hey, can you have a reverse grip on the handle? And that was about it. And as I was going through the bag, I found some old bits from the Satyr kit that have a really cool armor on the shoulder and forearm. And so here I am. I'm just doing a dry fit and kind of working with the bits and finding out what stuff works, what's going to do most of the work for me than trying to force something and see what has a good fit, what's proportional to the rest of the model, what idea kind of bubbles up as I'm working away on this. With the kit, there's some weird joints in there, and I think there's a few limitations of the kit itself. Kind of the squat legs and such always kind of bug me. But with the rest of the resins, using like a Dremel, I'm able to, or I guess this isn't resin, this is like a PVC. With a Dremel, I can really hack away at the model. So here, I've started to select some pieces. I'm test fitting using some putty just to hold things in place, just so I can see and get a general vibe of how everything's fitting and look at other angles of the model and see how it's all going to work together in the end. Found I really liked the shoulder bit. That heavily armored shoulder would be a really fun pop piece on the model. That circle armor is just so cool. I need to figure out a way to use it. Here we found a piece of one of the forearms that has like a armor bracer, so I wanted to take that and make use of it as well too, just adding more armor on that one side. I think I tested around with how the original model was supposed to look and kind of seeing the options. Since the kit had so many variants of arms and additional arms that I had from the Satyr kit, I really want to work those different combinations together and see what I like. I know there's a redundant level to what we're looking at here, but I can stress that taking your time in this initial step, planning your conversion out, seeing what fits and what doesn't, if you get this selected, you'll have a better process overall. I want to show off what I've got to tinker in the past. The Warpwolf kit is near and dear to my heart, and it's my favorite kit. It's amazing. There's so much fun in this kit. This is an incomplete one. I was kind of basing it on Berserk. One day I'll get around to finishing up the sculpt, but that amount of flexibility within this kit, I think, shows off well here. This is a little bit more of an intense modification that I've got to do. I was making a feral originally, and then when I came back to it, I repurposed it as Loki. I had a cool head from one of the Chaos Knight models that was like a wolf head, and it inspired me to make this more intense feral, where I tried to work on giving it more of a hunch and more muscle mass around the core. And then when I got back into Warmachine, I tried making my own Loki. This guy's about 10 years old, one of my earlier Warpwolf Stalker attempts. One thing I got really into was resculpting the chest and giving them more of a mane, and then also elongating the fingers to have a really cool claw look. This is a feral from that same army that I did. This was a pretty intense resculpt, getting into using those arms from the Satyr kit. A lot of fur sculpting, and then really going to town on the feet. You can see that the toes look really basic, and this is kind of like earlier sculpting. This was one of like my favorite models I got to pull off, was a multi-tailed shamanistic pureblood. She was a lot of fun. It was really interesting to kind of try to get a feminine figure and like sculpt down the core of the model and the waist size, but also not make it look egregious. And this bad boy's an old school Getorix conversion I did off of a extreme Warpwolf kit. These guys were like my like hardcore list for lock and load like 10 years ago. This kit is a blast, and I feel like I really got a chance to unlock it over the years. Now that I got a loose plan, it's time to commit. Let's get the Dremel out. Let's start ripping her apart. Open up that shoulder joint. The way we can get a nice connection between the Satyr shoulder to the Warpwolf, since the Warpwolf kit flares out at the shoulder. This way, by trimming it back, we can get that recess and get that shoulder joint where it needs to be. This PVC stuff from Privateer Press back in the day was really easy to use the Dremel on. A little bit messy because you get a lot of flaky little chunks, but fairly easy to work with, and you can get in there and grind away, and it wasn't too annoying at all. So again, test fitting over and over again to make sure that I have every little nuance, finding out where things are colliding to not get that perfect fit. I was discovering that the hair at the back of the body was actually interfering quite a bit, so we had to trim that off so I could get a nice fit. Now I'm starting to get a little happier with how that's all fitting up. It's time to commit, get that glue in there, start getting things in place so I can work on the next joint in the arm and figure out what I like there. As I wanted that Satyr arm with the bracer and the reverse grip, and trying to get all that armor and everything to line up, I was still deciding on like how I wanted the hand to be positioned. And then what I discovered was that if I were to remove the mounting point, I could resculpt the elbow and have the arm in a position that was more desirable. Really, this isn't that hard. You're going to be hiding most of that joint when you have that bracer there, and sculpting a little bit of an elbow behind the bracer isn't too bad at all. Now that I'm starting to get an idea of like how I want to position the hand and where I want everything for the arm, I wanted to get rid of the Satyr's hand, and I decided right at the wrapping, that area would be a great place to cut it. I could get a nice clean line. Got that done. Now it's time to pop off the sword, get that reverse grip on, and then I can start blocking out position a little bit more. With getting that reverse grip going on there, one thing I wanted to do was open up where the hand and the shaft of the blade like came out. So here we're cleaning up those areas, gonna get in there, Dremel out, or use my pin vise and drill out. I wanted to create kind of a ball socket in that space for the end of the handle, as it would, being recessed, it'll be a little bit more durable, and it gave more of a realistic feel that it wasn't like just bolted on the top. Since we got to recess it a little bit and work our hand around it, it looks a little bit more realistic than just gluing it on the end of the hand. Here we're just pinning out the sword because we're going to get a pin in there just to make sure it's nice and a strong joint for gameplay, that we're not, we don't want to build a model that's going to fall apart. Here, just test fitting in pretty standard stuff. Getting your glue into the joint, recessing the pin, and then kind of making a judgment call on the size of how much depth we need. Now that I got that done, we're kind of blocking out how we're going to position this. Get that elbow joint and wrist joint figured out. I was seeing here that the hand was colliding with the wrist area of that armor as well too. We're cleaning up around the elbow as well to remove material to have a little bit more play, and then we're going to sculpt in everything else afterwards. And again, it's really not that hard. I think being tactful with where we're removing details and how we're hiding details will be a great way to cheat and get through this. This is a fairly simple conversion. There's a lot of reposing, but I think in the long run, you'll see in this video that it's something that's easily attainable for newer people as they're trying to attempt stuff like this. And a lot of the pre-planning is what's really going to make this sing. In here, trying to get that elbow down, putting a little bit of glue and my sculpting compound in there to create like a really sticky, strong joint. Here, this is where we're seeing if I tilted the hand a little bit more, I could get that blade in a better position. With this process being something that's evolving as I'm converting it, I saw the idea of keeping all the armor on the one side of the body, and it created a fun, like, lack of balance, but that the sword fighting arm is going to have all the armor, so I decided to make the other arm was just leather bands on it to keep that kind of interesting style choice going on here. As I was speaking about earlier, we knocked off a part of the palm so we could create that negative space so we can get more of an angle at that joint when we're trying to have him holding it with the reverse grip, because he wouldn't hold it out straight. He kind of like reverse grip, tucking it behind him. Gives a very cool fighting pose. Pinning the wrist joint was important to make sure that we have that stability in there. So at this stage, I've basically got the whole model blocked out. We have all the crucial components in place. I've left some pieces unglued, like the head, so I can remove it later on for sculpting. But overall, I'm looking for the balance of the model. Like, everything seems to has a good fit. He has a nice natural pose. He looks playable as well too, something that will be able to be on the board and not interfering too heavily with model placement or something like that. Sometimes I know it's fun to make things as cool as possible, but then they become quite a chore to deal with while playing with the model. I'm using my clay shaper, and we're just gonna go around and start filling in the gaps. The clay shapers do most of the work, really. I'm just trying to smooth and blend these areas in. They don't have to be full of detail, but if you're getting a nice smooth transition and you paint the skin, no one's going to be the wiser. These are also in areas that are all fairly hidden and not too exposed, so we're not having to sculpt in any major details here. The cloth on the bottom bracer, I needed to flare it out to make this area fit a little bit more. So at first what I did was start kind of sculpting in what was going to be the skin underneath it, and then I did an extra layer of sculpting just to get that cloth over top of it, making it an easier job than trying to put a large chunk and then section and flare that out. By doing it in layers, you're able to get a lot more simpler work done and just focus on sculpting simple shapes. Here we're getting into the elbow. I'm trying to fill everything as well here because there's going to be some hidden areas that we had gaps from when everything got pinned into place and glued. I wanted to make sure I had that material filling all of that joint and utilizing it to build that structure. One thing I always recommend with sculpting is I've done a lot of sculpting and then put my hand in it later that night. Don't bite off more than you need to in a session. It's better to do, a couple nights of sculpting and letting areas cure so you don't need to worry about wrecking them as you handle the model. Take your time, space it out. It's just going to lead to a better product in the end. Anyhow, I've ruined multiple nights worth of work because I've just gone too far in one night, and then lo and behold, I put a fingerprint in something and you're like, back to square one. So here we're filling out the wrist. Same thing, just sneaking the putty into all the cracks, filling it up so you have nice coverage, and then blending this out. Again, I highly recommend a set of clay shapers. I think these are all size 0, and I use them for everything I do. They're my favorite sculpting tool. I had to resculpt a little bit of the palm from what we cut away earlier, but that was fairly easy work of just, again, small little ball, able to blend that out, and lo and behold, everything works out. So here, pop the head back off so I had access to the other side of the shoulder joint. That way I can fill everything, blend it in, make it look seamless. I always recommend wherever you can keep your model apart to make it easier for yourself later while you're working on it, try to plan that out. Because you're going to get into these tight areas that you won't be able to get a sculpting tool in or something like that. And if you can work on a subsection and then attach it to the core of the model later, you're just saving yourself a headache. I understand sometimes we feel the need to almost see more of the finished product earlier in the process to keep us inspired, but try to do that with putting in pins that you don't glue in one side or something like that, so you're able to mock the model together, keep a tab on its overall shape, pose, everything that you're trying to keep tabs on, and then still keep it in sub-assemblies so you can work on it more diligently and not have to be working so hard because you're fighting against what you've already glued together. So now I'm blending in the collar to the shoulder. I kept the head removable so I'd have ease of access here. With details like this, sometimes I always try to keep in mind to keep it simple. It's really easy to bridge that collar right up to the shoulder pad and have it be the rest of those details be hidden underneath it. You don't have to sculpt it or anything like that, right? So making the effort into a little section of detail here at the back edge of it so it still looks believable and not too bland, but all we're having to do here is just really make like a flat space that's slightly raised above the hair, and we're using that to cover some of the area of the hair that we ground down to make sure we can get a good fit with the shoulder. Now it's time to commit, get that head glued on, and then I think I had a little gap here that I just wanted to like fill up a little bit more because that area beside his head was lower. We put a little bit of putty in there to fill. Now I'm going to go around the model and gap fill. The clay shapers, again, make this very easy. Roll out a little snake, putty, jab it into the joint, and then start blending it out in each direction. Do whatever you can do to make it as smooth as possible. You can see in here, I'm not really adding extra detail. I'm just trying to blend the difference between the two pieces meeting up. And it's a very simple process. And by taking that time to do that and removing those gaps, it just makes everything on the model look that much more believable. This is fairly boring work to go around and gap fill, but you can see how the clay shaper really makes short work of this, and I'm blending it out, and really I'm trucking along just fine. It's an easy process and well worthwhile doing. I always found the joints here around the legs really a pain to deal with. You always had to give them a gap fill because they never got that flush fit. And same with the tail area here too. Here, I was just using like a pick tool just to fill a little bit of a fur texture in there. Nobody likes a bent sword. So, it's time to fix that. I'm gonna grab a cup of hot water. Nothing boiling, but I have a water dispenser that has hot water, and that temperature has been good enough to heat up and soften the PVC. And so I'll set the model in there, let it rest for a little bit, warm up. You don't have to set it in there too long because then it would be too soft. Usually I find that even the initial rest in there will help correct any bends. I'm going to just adjust it nicely, not make any too big movements in one shot, and set it back in there to heat it up again. I think the tip of it was still a little bent. So I keep making small adjustments until I'm happy with its positioning. And here we are. That was a really fun build and essentially really simple for us to pull off. And I think we've got a great look here. Heavily armored on one side, the reverse grip on the blade. He's looking pretty badass. I'm very happy with this model. It was really nice to be able to revisit this kit after so many years of getting to play around with it. Thanks again for watching the video. Please remember to like and subscribe. If you have any questions, hit me up in the comments section. I'd love to interact with you guys there. See you guys next time.